right. You can be seated. I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight to another episode of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teacher Certification course. I hope you all have your books. If you don't, you can download online. You can download the book. Actually, all the books that we've been in so far in this course, in the Teacher Certification course. You can go back and get them all. And for the ones that are coming, you'll be able to download those also. Whether you're on a computer or on a phone, you can do that. Just hit that drop-down menu and it should get you there. Okay. So we've been going through the responsibility unit, and we have arrived actually at the end. And so what we're going to do is a review, first of all, of this chapter that we're just finishing up with. And it's chapter number 7, unit 5, responsibility unit. And after we do that, if there's any time left, we will just give a really brief overview from start to finish, just a couple of the high points from the start of the book to the back of the book here. And just to let you know, the next class will be on the 21st. It'll be Sunday the 21st at 5:30 p.m. And Chris will most likely be the teacher of that class. So Sunday the 21st at 5:30 p.m. You can all look forward to that. We will be, if he doesn't do a review of this book, then we'll be starting in a new book. All right, so we ended up on page 155 down at the bottom, and we're going over to page 156, what I have learned. Now, what we're talking about particularly in this particular chapter is you can be responsible for your safety. That's what chapter 7 is. That's the title. You can be responsible for your safety. And we've gone through this chapter now and spent quite a bit of time in it, I think, and in hopes of really explaining things. One of the last things that I talked about was having an emergency kit available. So I'm just going to go ahead and tell you now, that emergency kit, I was telling you all about it, and I knew exactly where that was. And I was going to get, I was thinking I had to put some shoes in there. I was missing some shoes in there. I knew exactly where that emergency kit was, right? And we should know where it is. But I'm here to let you know tonight. I got home and I was going to get it and put some shoes in it, And I went to where I knew it was at, and it wasn't there. So I'm going ahead and letting you know that tonight. I felt a little bit like a hypocrite, or that I didn't know what in the world I was talking about, because I knew where that was at, and it wasn't there. So now I've got to adjust a little bit and let you know this, and so just always try to be aware of where it's at. Anybody can make a mistake on that. But I really did think I knew where it was at, because I had looked at it over and over and over again. And anyway, so long story short, it wasn't there, and so I'm dealing with that situation right now. So we're all in the same boat. We're getting our emergency kit together, making sure it's where we know it's at and really do know, not just guessing or from the last time we looked at it, 3 months ago or 6 months ago or what it might be. I need to stay on top of that a little bit more, because it is very important. So there you go. It can occur to all of us, okay? All right, so anyways, getting on over to page 156. Now this is what I've learned. This is kind of a review of this chapter. Well, it is a review of this chapter. It's not a real in-depth review, but yet it does touch on the high points of everything that we've been through so far in this chapter. And some of you will recall when we go back over these things, the words should come back to you in any of the videos and so forth that you've seen. We were talking about the natural, what they call natural disasters that take place, and man-made and natural. And tonight we've got a few pictures of it. We're not going to show it right now, but when we get to the appropriate time. All right, so at the top of page 156, it starts out, What I Have Learned. All right, and when you first hear that title, you might think, well, what have I learned? Really, when you sit back and think about it, what have you learned in this unit right here, in this chapter? Let's just keep it at this chapter, chapter 7. What have you learned in this chapter? What can you really reach out and grab hold of and say, I learned that while we were going through this chapter over the past several weeks, past month or two? Was it having your emergency kit together? Was it having a meeting place? What was it, just being aware of what terrorism is and some of the natural type disasters that you might not have experienced, whether you've been in a hurricane before, or whether you've been in an earthquake before, or a tornado, or something like that, something of the sort. For those that have been in these things, you pretty much know how to react in those situations and how to act or how to prepare yourself for those situations when they come to pass. Anyway, the environment is really something that we don't have much control of right now. It's gone haywire. There's a lot of reasons for it. And so the best we can do at this time, I think, is to keep a watch on it and do our part, whatever we can do, to make sure it doesn't get out of whack like this ever again. So what I've learned. Let's look at the very first check mark there, the box. It says, I can be responsible for my safety and survival by becoming knowledgeable about the types of disasters that could affect my family and me. I can be responsible, taking hold of it, for my safety, learning or being responsible, learning how to be safe, learning what to do. I can be responsible for my safety and survival by becoming knowledgeable about the types of disasters that could affect my family and me. And of course, you'd want to share it with those that, not only in your household, but wherever you could, but this is particularly talking about in your household, I think. And if we want to turn back over to page 131, we can take a look at something that might help us get a little clearer picture of that. Okay, on page 131, about midways down, in bold, it says, how can I be responsible for my safety when disasters are usually unexpected? We talked about this too. Tornadoes can come very unexpected. You might get some type of little warning, like a tornado watch, and they say, there's a possibility one of these things could form. You keep your eyes open, but once it's there, you have very little warning. It's just there. Along with other things. Hurricanes, you got a little more warning that it's coming, but then it might be hard to get out of town, like we talked about in Houston, how hard it is to get out of there when a hurricane's on the way. All right, the key word in the question, how can I be responsible for my safety when disasters are usually unexpected? So the key word in the question is usually. Usually does not mean always. In other words, not every disaster is unexpected. That's true. You can be given advanced warning, but it's up to you to pay attention to the warnings and take them seriously. Have you ever seen, let's just say on the news, or maybe you've known somebody in person, but on the news I know we've seen people before that they're interviewing that are going to ride out the storm. You see that a lot in hurricanes. When people who live on Galveston Island, for instance, South Texas down there on the coast, they've been through hurricanes and storms and rising tides and so forth. And a lot of them just kind of say, whatever. That just comes and goes. I've been here 40 years, and I'll make it another 40 years. That type thing. And they don't really, take it to heart, even though there's an advance notice there. So, and some do though. Some try to get out of town like right away. They're gathering stuff up. They get their emergency kit. They're making sure they're full of gas. All these things so they can get out of town when they really know that it's imminent that this hurricane is coming. All right, so you can be given advanced warning, but it's up to you to pay attention to the warnings and take them seriously. For example, the weather bureaus often know days in advance when a dangerous storm is approaching an area. Having a plan and being prepared can make a difference to your survival. In the event that you're in an unexpected disaster, knowing what to do, being prepared, and having a plan is still the best way to avoid tragedy. If you're in Tornado Alley, or if you're in an area that has a lot of hurricanes and so forth, or even earthquakes, you can plan what you will do. I know in hurricanes, I used to live in Houston. I know some of you here used to live there as well. And, you kind of got an idea of what you're going to do. You know that you need your flashlight, if you've got an emergency kit put together like you should have, like we talked about, you get that emergency kit, you make sure you get full of gas at the first opportunity you can, even at the first thought of there a storm coming, you want to go get full of gas because you're not going anywhere if you have to wait in line at the gas station for an hour or so just to try to get fuel. And believe me, that does take place. For any of you that have been in that situation, you know very well what I'm talking about. So being prepared, maybe even having a little extra gas kept safely, of course, around your dwelling. So knowing what to do, being prepared, having a plan, it's absolutely the best way to avoid tragedy, being prepared. So that's what we're talking about doing here. Now, if you continue on here, here's a cold, hard fact. We are living in uncertain times, and this means that with the invention of weapons of mass destruction, coupled with disease epidemics, civil unrest, distrust, and anger between nations, inactive volcanoes suddenly become active, and unpredictable weather patterns. It is wise to expect the unexpected. Uncertain times, disease epidemics, we've seen that. Unrest, civil unrest, we've got that going on right here in the U.S. Distrust and anger between nations, that's going on right now. We've got volcanoes that are spurting up and blowing off now that used to be inactive. And unpredictable weather patterns. Sometimes these storms pop up and you didn't even really expect it. But it's wise to expect the unexpected. And if you turn over to the next page on 132, it talks about a dose of reality. You say you've never experienced either a natural or man-made disaster? Well, great. Hopefully you'll always remain one step ahead of the calamity. But lots of people have experienced disaster in one form or another in the world, and there could be a hurricane, flood, earthquake, tornado, etc. And there's a few articles that you could read and so forth, but this basically gives that question right there, or that statement. The statement again was, I can be responsible for my safety and survival by becoming knowledgeable about the types of disasters that could affect my family and me. And then getting prepared, getting your family prepared, getting everybody on board on being ready to take the steps that are necessary to take. A lot of people, they wait till the last minute on it, and they're like, oh, no, it's not going to hit us, don't worry about it. And they just continue procrastinating until the very end, and then it's too late. Or, they barely make it out by just barely make it. Continuing on, hurricanes, let's look at the next check mark there. Hurricanes, tornadoes, and earthquakes are called natural disasters. Terrorism in the form of bombings or germ warfare are examples of man-made disasters. Let's turn over to page 129 first. And we're talking about, this book is responsibility. That's what it is. So chapter 7, the title of chapter 7 that we're just finishing up with is You Can Be Responsible for Your Safety. And in the note to the teacher, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, terrorist attacks, these are only some of the disasters that can threaten our safety and security. As devastating as these natural and man-made disasters can be, we do not have to sit idly by, powerless to protect our lives and property. We can accept responsibility for our safety, health, and well-being by taking the time to prepare before the disaster strikes. See that? Before the disaster strikes. Some people don't go as far into preparation as others do. Now, I bet just about everybody has a flashlight in some form or another sitting around their house. Some have 2 or more, you know. Some have 1 in every room. That's a great idea. But almost everybody has a flashlight. But does it stop right there? We can educate ourselves on what to expect from these disasters and then prepare ourselves and our families accordingly. And this is the responsibility that we're talking about. This is the responsibility that all people are encouraged to embrace in talking about this chapter, of course. There's other areas of responsibility that we've already covered, and this one is being responsible for our safety in these, natural type disasters. Because the threat of danger from both natural and man-made disasters dominates the headlines, even children are being taught how they can take responsibility for their safety and to share their knowledge of disaster preparedness with their families. That's what we're doing here too. This final lesson is designed to help students become familiar with various types of disasters. And so that's what we're doing there. Talking about terrorism and the bombings and germ warfare and all that, if you turn over to page 144, one of the things that we saw, well, we've seen it since then too, but, back when the Twin Towers came down, that was terrorism. Some say it was homegrown. Some say it was from, some overseas country coming in that's mad at us, and so there's a lot of different ideas on what that's from, or who was behind it, I should say. But nevertheless, it is terrorism. It strikes terror into people. Unlike natural disasters, terrorism is man-made and deliberate. Terrorism is defined as the use of violence or the threat of violence to create a climate of fear in a given population. Often, terrorist organizations are small and represent the beliefs of only a few within a society. Now, we're talking about, for the most part, big events here, but, they call something, if you threaten somebody to do bodily harm to them, they call that terroristic threatening. If you, with your mouth, speak out and say you're going to do some type of physical act that will harm somebody if they don't do this or if they do that, etc., it's terroristic threatening, and it's no fun. You can go to jail for that. You can get a huge, big fine for that. Now, a lot of children don't think that much about it. In school, a lot of times things are going on where people threaten one another. I'm going to hit you. I'm going to do this, Well, that's terroristic threatening. It's just that depending upon what's going on there, the result may not be the same. I mean, I know people who have done that as adults and said that to someone else and got thrown in jail and had to post bond and go through the whole thing and go to court and all that stuff. So it's no fun. And there's probably people still sitting in jail because of it this day. So terrorism, though, on all levels is not right. And it is man-made. And it's the threat of use of violence. But unlike the natural disasters that can be predicted with, highly advanced weather equipment, acts of terrorism are unpredictable because there's no sure way of determining when one's group's hate can turn to violence. And that's when they do, like a major deal, just like this talks about the World Trade Center, okay? On page 148, well, actually, in between there too, 146, 147, it talks a little bit more about terror in different places. And then on 148, it talks about germ warfare. Now, we here might think that we haven't really had to deal with that too much, but it's all around us. Germ warfare is all around us. Now, of course, we hear about big things like anthrax and smallpox and or whatever, all of these viruses. In fact, let me just read this. Believe it or not, terrorists can also wage war against innocent people with germs. Yes, that's right, germs. If someone intentionally releases germs or other biological substances into the air to make people sick, it is called germ warfare. It's also referred to as a biological attack. Some biological agents, such as anthrax, are not contagious and will not spread from one person to the next. When it's released into the air, it affects only those who breathe it in. On the other hand, other biological agents, such as a virus that causes smallpox and ricin, are very contagious and can spread from one person to the next by talking at close range, touching, coughing, sneezing. Now, you see why in the Peaceful Solution we suggest that you stand back away from people a little bit, and that if you are coughing or sneezing or what have you, you might consider wearing a mask so that you don't contaminate everybody else around you. And if somebody around you is coughing and wheezing and sneezing and everything else, you might consider keeping your distance away so that you don't partake of it, because you never know what's coming from that person. And so in the Peaceful Solution, we do teach you to be aware of what's going on, be prepared, and also, conduct yourself safely in all ways, whether you're the one doing the coughing and everything or whether you're standing by. So we know about this in the Peaceful Solution, and on all levels, we want to watch for that, okay? So going back over to page 156, on page 156, so we've covered the first two high points there, and on page 137, this is quite a number, but on page 137, we can go there, but let me read this. With an average of 800 tornadoes a year, the United States has the highest annual average of tornadoes in the world. 800 tornadoes a year, and that's the highest annual average of tornadoes in all the world. Isn't that amazing right here? How about that? Let's see over on page 137. Tornadoes. And we talked quite a bit about tornadoes during this chapter. The word tornado means to thunder. A tornado is a rotating funnel cloud that extends downward from a mass of dark clouds. Large thunderstorms appear in the sky. Rounded masses at the bottom of the cloud start to twist, and one of the twisting masses forms a funnel that gradually extends downward. Some funnels do not reach the earth. Others might touch down and withdraw into the clouds above, only to dip down and strike the earth again. Tornadoes move over land, sometimes over short distances, sometimes miles at a time. Whatever is in their paths can run the risk of much damage and destruction. Can we show some of the pictures? Can we show the slide, please? All right, so just to give you an idea, and this is not near the total extent of the damage that a tornado can do, but here in the last few days, a storm ripped through the Midwest. High winds, tornadoes, thunderstorms, you name it, they had it. This is some of the aftermath of that storm. Now, how many people died? They're still counting, I believe. And as far as the total of the amount of property destruction, we don't know yet. But if you start looking kind of close there, you'll notice there's some cars that are thrown here and there, upside down, hoods torn off, stuff like that. Total houses just completely demolished, whether that was an apartment complex or it looks like it could have been. I'm going to tell you, I can't really tell right there, that one picture that right in the middle of the screen, but you can look at the houses behind too. And it's interesting how some of the houses can go relatively unscathed and then the other ones are totally demolished. right there next to each other, like within 50 yards or less. It's amazing because the funnel of that tornado comes down, and depending upon how much of it is touching down, it depends on the width of that path of the tornado. Some of them are quite wide and do quite a path of destruction. I know in Little Rock, Arkansas, not that long ago, there was a huge tornado that came through there, and it tore up an area that wasn't really torn up that much about. It wasn't expected for this area, is what I should say. It was an area of town in that city that was kind of hilly and kind of an affluent area, middle class, I would say. And it tore through there and just did so much damage. Total houses were gone. There's one of the students of the Peaceful Solution here that actually lives here near headquarters now, that the house he used to live in as a child, he saw it on the news. When he was watching the news, he saw that it was his old neighborhood. The house wasn't there. There was nothing left of that house except the front steps. That was it, the concrete front steps. Everything else, I mean, really gone. I'm not talking about torn up. I'm talking about gone, completely gone. And that was one of the few houses that was quite like that, but the entire neighborhood was torn up. It's like it went up and down the hill and around and back around again or something, because it just tore everything up, jumped across the freeway, tore up a big shopping center, and then went on its path of destruction. And that particular area, as I recall, because I lived there for some years, had been kind of impervious to the tornadoes that would come through there. The tornadoes usually did follow the Interstate 30 area, and it would just come through, and Benton, Arkansas, and these places leading into Little Rock would get hammered, and then Little Rock would get hammered, North Little Rock would get hammered. And so, but they move over land, sometimes short distances, sometimes miles at a time. And the damage that it causes, if you can just imagine that wind, that twisting wind, how it can do that kind of damage, it's just amazing. Let's look at another one of the pictures there, the next one. All right, so this one shows kind of the formation of it. It's not full bore right there, but it's forming. And you don't know when it's going to gain that complete force. Now, this is what it looked like a couple weeks ago when I came through Texarkana, Texas, and on the Texarkana, Texas, and Arkansas, but on the Arkansas side, the tornado had started forming, and it was a lot like this right there. Except people were stopping. They were stopping on the highway and looking and all. And I'm honking my horn saying, "Come on, guys, let's move. Get out of here. It's coming our way," And they didn't. I don't know if they just didn't realize or what, that it could turn into major destruction that fast. Just so fast at the snap of a finger. But anyways, it does a lot of damage, and it's so just you can't really know. The path is unreliable. You just can't really know what's going on, when it's going to hit, and how hard it's going to hit. All you can do is watch for it, and at night it's very hard. If it were like this, where you could at least see where it was at, it'd be a whole lot better. But usually, man, they come at night, and there's rain and wind and everything else around, and you don't know where it's at and where it's fixing to hit. But tornadoes do occur in all parts of the world, and the pressure in the center of that funnel right there, I'm in the middle of the page, on page 137, but the pressure in the middle of that funnel can cause buildings and other structures to explode, in fact, if they're not ventilated well. And that's why they say, open the windows and then get to if it's imminent, it's right there, it's coming your way, everything's shaking and you hear the train kind of sound in the background, guess what? It's on you. It's right there. You need to do something. And so a lot of people go to their bathroom and climb in the bathtub and stand in a hallway or something in hopes of missing it. And that does help, but as you'll see in some of these pictures, or have seen, it can wipe out, it can just take the entire house. So anyway, 800 tornadoes a year in the U.S., resulting in 80 deaths or more and over 1,500 injuries yearly. And Most of the tornadoes in the U.S. occur within the Rocky Mountain region, the center, really, and it's known as Tornado Alley, which you can see on the map on page 137. It includes Texas and down about where we're at, and then goes up to Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, etc. But I'll tell you, there's more on that map too, going east and northeast through Arkansas and Missouri and the corner of Oklahoma there. Those places get hit all the time. Joplin, Missouri has been hit over and over again with massive destruction done. So that path needs to widen a little bit. It's very, very dangerous. All right, back to page 156. On page 156, the next bullet point or check mark there, the box, not every disaster is unexpected. The weather bureaus can give advance warning, but it's up to me to pay attention to the warnings and take them seriously. A lot of times with tornadoes, it's a tornado watch. You know, they're stating that one could possibly form, but they haven't heard of one forming yet. They're just saying it could possibly form. In fact, it sounds like a little bit of a storm might be forming right now outside from the sound of things. But these things come so quickly, and so it's great to have a news channel, whether on your phone or television or something, a news channel that you can go to, and a lot of them give, you know, every 10, 15 minutes they give an update on the path of the tornado or how bad a storm is and so forth. And it's just different areas have different ways of doing it. Some of them just preempt all the programs and go straight to keeping a steady watch on it, you know. But anyway, we have a little bit of this on page 139. We can go to page 139. Advance warning, down at the bottom, it talks about advance warning is our best defense. And it tells a story right up above that, Travis's story. And it's talking about a young man's experience in a tornado. He's talking about how they just got home from baseball practice. It was real windy. They went inside and they got a phone call when someone told them a tornado was heading towards them. You know, they could see the path. So they went into the bathroom. Then the tornado picked up the house and slammed it down. It was hard to breathe because we were in the eye of the tornado. Then the tornado slammed down again and carried our house over a field about 150 yards. 150 yards? Really? That's from here out into the parking lot. Then it sucked us out. We landed in a field. Can you imagine flying around, in the air, just stuff flying around you and not being able to do anything about it? I mean, you can't just sit here and go like that and try to flap your wings and go a different direction. You're just being tossed all around with it, you know? Anyway, they landed in a field. He broke his leg in 2 places and his arm. Mom and Dad weren't hurt. Our house was totally destroyed except for the roof, and it landed in a lake behind the house. The tornado was an F4, and it traveled over 30 miles with a wind over 250 miles per hour. There were 2 people who were killed because of the tornado. One was a lady who was our neighbor, who was thrown from her trailer into a pond, and another was a man who lived up the road. A chimney fell on him while he's protecting his son. That was in Illinois. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next picture on that slide. So just kind of sharing a few of these with you along the way, remind you about how it looks, the aftermath. This is the aftermath, again, of the recent Midwest storms. Excuse me. Remember about staying hydrated. All right, so as you can see, I mean, what a mess it creates. Now, this is not the worst destruction right here, but this is pretty bad. Where do you start in something like this? Where do you start when you come and you find your house or your business or whatever just torn completely apart like that? And, you know, who knows where everything's at? It looks like there's a car door right there, and there's cars turned over there. Some of your stuff is down the street. Your car's smashed, all that. Where in the world do you start at? You know, you smell gas or propane coming from some of the lines. You know, you got to watch for electrical wires. I mean, there's all these things you have to be careful of. Where in the world do you start at? Do you wait for the National Guard to get there and let them start kind of directing on what to do and where to go? No, people get in there and they start trying to pull their lives together and find a little bit of what they had. This is why when you go through something like this, you kind of learn that, possessions, you can start over without the possessions that you have. You can start over without the family pictures that you have. You can start out without the family heirlooms and the jewelry. You can start out without the saved coins or whatever. You can start out without the motorcycle that you had when you were a teenager that you still have in the garage. You can start over again without any of that stuff. People find out real quick that they can do without it. So all the things along the way that we gather up and all, we do it. And it's part of life. There's nothing wrong with having possessions. But when something like this comes along and takes place, we kind of get back down to earth about things. All right, as you can see from Travis's story, tornadoes can be very dangerous, and this is why being responsible to learn all you can about them and what you and your family can do to survive if one were to hit where you live is so important. Tornadoes are scary. Once again, the Weather Bureau's advance warning is one of the best ways to prepare and survive a tornado. A tornado warning is issued if a tornado is detected on radar or if a responsible person sights a tornado and reports it to the nearest Weather Bureau office or community warning center. Once a tornado is sighted, warnings are sent out quickly over television and radio. Now, right here in this community, in this area, there is a man that keeps close watch on the weather. He tracks it all the time and shares it with those who want the information shared. He's got my number and he sends me updates when serious weather is coming our way, and I pay attention to it. Some things you just got to look at and say, well, there's nothing we can do about it at this time, but we can be prepared. Hopefully we're all prepared for those things when they're taking place or when they're getting ready to take place. So, anyways, that was on page 139. Let's get on back over to page 156. Well, it's definitely raining out there. I don't know what else it's doing at this time. I haven't gotten a weather warning yet on my phone at this time, but if some of you do, well, be aware. All right, the next checkpoint there is the basic necessities of life, such as food, water, and shelter, can be destroyed in a disaster. And, we just talked about that. When things are destroyed like that, even if you have stuff at your house, you have survival gear, you have extra food, you have water, all these things, and something as serious as a tornado comes along and rips it apart, now you don't have any of that stuff. You know what I mean? It's not there. That's not to say don't prepare. Yeah, prepare, but just know that in the blink of an eye, it can be gone. So it'd be great to be prepared in a couple places or have, some kind of backup plan. But definitely have your, for some of you that were here at the beginning of the class, definitely have your emergency duffel bag and everything ready to go. For those of you that just came in, a few of you did, or some of you online that just dropped in, I was talking about the last class, how I knew exactly where my emergency bag was, and I was going to go put something lacking in it. I was going to go take care of that, and I got home and my bag was not where it was supposed to be. So there, I didn't want to. I felt a bit like a hypocrite, saying, hey, you need to have that bag there and everything, and know it's there. Well, guess what? I really did. I knew it was there, but it wasn't when I got home. It was not there. So that just shows how it can slide by you. It can occur to all of us. So anyway, be prepared. Keep an eye on your emergency stuff. Know where it's at all times. But the basic necessities of life, such as food, water, and shelter, they can be destroyed, in a heartbeat. On page 154, for a rainy day, it says, have you ever heard the saying, save some for a rainy day? Well, disaster preparedness is for families to stock up on items they use on a regular basis. In other words, put some away for a rainy day. All right? So it's talking about the supermarkets in your area. You know, they might not have the stock that you're used to them having in an emergency, and they won't. You'll go there and they'll be out of water, they'll be out of bread, they'll be out of, you know, a lot of the basic stuff that people go in there to get. It'll be gone. It just won't be there. So you stock up, but also knowing that it can be gone in a heartbeat. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. It can be destroyed, so have a backup plan if you can. If you can. Not everybody can, but try to have a backup plan. On the next bullet point, it talks about a meeting place should be established outside the house so that all family members can be accounted for in a time of disaster. And, you know, that's on page 153. It actually talks about that very thing. But this is really, it's a common sense thing. Anybody that's ever been involved in any type of fire drill or you know, nuclear bomb drill, you know, all these drills, they're there for a reason. And I know I kind of chuckled at the nuclear bomb drill because, you know, the whole thing we were told was watch for the flash of light and then get down under your desk, put your hands over your head. You know, like that's really going to help with a nuclear bomb there, you know. But, I mean, you know, we were told to do that, and we did. We were obedient. And we know a little bit more about it these days, and so I kind of chuckled a little bit. But have a meeting place. Along with an emergency kit, you should also have a designated area outside of your home where you and your family can meet if there's a disaster. Then you can look around and see who's there. There's many tragic stories of people dying because they went back into a burning house to save a family member who was already outside in a safe place. Now that's tragic right there. If they had planned a designated meeting area, these tragedies could have been avoided. So some of the hot tips: put together a miniature emergency kit and carry it with you. At least you would have that in case everything else got totally destroyed. Encourage your family to take a course in CPR and first aid. Ask your parents if you can learn how to turn off the gas, electricity, and water valves at your home. You know, all these things. Yes, be aware on how to do these things. But for the children that are listening to this, don't just take it upon yourself to do that. It says, the instruction that was given was check with your parents. Get with them and find out if you can do that and if you can be responsible in the case of emergency. And that's why we do drills. That's why even here at the Peaceful Solution, we do drills. When we have a large meeting sometimes that lasts for days, we will do a drill to make sure everybody knows the way out of the meeting room and the way back in and so forth, and where everybody would go to be counted and make sure everybody was accounted for. You know, so you see that emergency preparedness in action. And so for the children, which I see some that have gathered here tonight, hey, ask your parents if you can help out and be responsible in some area. But you got to practice. It's got to become like muscle memory, okay? All right, so the next checkpoint is I can be responsible and prepare an emergency kit by storing water, non-perishable food, money, flashlights, blankets, candles, batteries. Yeah, and we just talked about that a little bit, you know. But to go into some of the things you would want in that kit, excuse me, you got to stay hydrated, remember that. I see some of you, yep. Water, Gatorade, something, okay? Even when it's raining outside, you still need to stay hydrated if the temperature's up there, you know. All right, let's take a closer look. Page 151. Let's look at that real quick. So it's amazing how many things we use on a daily basis that are vital to our survival. Having electricity and access to the many appliances that run on electricity, such as a refrigerator, gas to cook with, food, water, clothes, warm blankets, all these things are some things we sometimes take for granted. In case of disaster, they might not be available. I mean, that's just all there is to it. They might not be. If your house had a direct hit or it was in your yard, like a tornado, for instance, you're probably not going to have these things available for you. You might think, well, I'll just get in my car. I'll stay in my car, be warm. Your car might be upside down. You don't know where it's going to be. What you're going to be doing if you don't have a backup plan, what you'll be doing is probably finding a shelter somewhere that they've set aside, that maybe FEMA or something is set up to get people into. And you could be aware of what's going on like that too. How would you be aware? Well, if you had a radio in your car, or a radio like a transistor type radio, something like that, or had a plan on where you could go to hear what's going on. If you know that there's a local store down here that wasn't hit by the tornado, and you can go and meet there for a minute or something and see what's going on. They might have a TV, the news playing, or radio or something like that. So kind of have a plan of what you could do, instead of, some people get hysterical and they run around and screaming and just causing problems for everybody else. Be prepared, have a bit of a plan. Some of the things to consider when preparing is to have a little bit of cash on hand, small bills so that you can use them. If you go everywhere with a $100 bill, you might see something you really want and need, but you might not be getting any change because they might not have it. And you might want it so bad, you just give the guy the 100 and roll on down the road, So try to have some small bills, some 10s, some 5s, 1s even, Try to be prepared in that respect. Try to have some bottled water available. A change of clothes and shoes set aside somewhere. Blankets, yep, and remember they've got those thermal blankets that, when I say thermal, I mean the reflective blankets that do a pretty great job of getting the sun's heat and supplying it for you. The weatherproof matches and candles, you can't say enough about having some matches or a lighter or something like that in case of an emergency, as well as flashlight and batteries, or a charged up flashlight and a way to recharge it. AM/FM shortwave radio with batteries, yep, that would be great. I was with somebody today and they had a emergency band radio that there was a fire nearby down one of the roads. It's not too far from here, and I heard it on his radio. I mean, you could hear it clearly talking about on 604 there was a fire. I mean, they were explaining where it was just perfectly and how big the fire was and so forth. So it's great to have something where you can hear about the emergency situations that are taking place. It's great to have some non-perishable food items, canned meats, crackers, stuff like that. Tuna, sardines, peanut butter. Have some stuff like that. It'll go a long ways. Always remember, though, also that you need water more than you need food. Yes, you need food, but you can go a while without food. You can't go but a few days without water. So if you really get in depth in your first aid kit and it's all there, you'd want to have a sewing kit. You definitely want to have any prescription medications that you need to be taking. You need to have some extras if you're allowed to have extras. Plastic bags, there's many uses for those. Toilet paper, hand wipes, we talked about the money, and some basic tools. Nothing replaces having a hammer, a pair of pliers, and a screwdriver. I mean, if you got that, you can do a lot of things with that right there. And when you add a roll of duct tape to that and some rope, you can do a lot of stuff with duct tape, rope, a hammer, pliers, and a screwdriver. You can handle a lot of stuff with that right there. So these are some basic stuff that'll all fit in a little bag about that big to go inside your emergency kit. Trying to make sure I talk loud enough here. I think that's getting pretty loud. It's better to have and not need than to need and not have. All right, let's go back on over to page 156. And this section that we're going over right now is the review of chapter 7 of the responsibility unit. Kind of hitting the high points on what we've covered here, talking about the natural disasters, how to be prepared, and what we can do to make sure we're doing our part on preparation. All right, so on the next checkpoint, bullet point, I can encourage my parents or guardians to store enough non-perishable food and non-food items such as toilet paper, matches, and so forth to last for 1 to 3 months in case we're unable to go to the supermarkets for an extended period of time. Okay, so here's a situation right here where Yeah, you know, you got your emergency bag that you would have for like an immediate type emergency. You would have it there, ready to go, possibly enough to keep you and your family for 3 or 4 days, or who knows, something in that range. But being prepared in your household. Now, if your house wasn't destroyed by the natural disaster, by the tornado or whatever came your way, if it wasn't destroyed and it was something else, might be it was the germ warfare or war of some type, or or a storm that destroyed the nearby supermarket and some other things. You know, having things in your house, having preparation in your house, such as the toilet paper, the matches, and canned food items and so forth, nothing replaces that. I think we all got a little bit of taste of that back during COVID. You remember? You remember how stores, if you could go to the store, remember how stores, they didn't have any the wet wipes, the little packages of wet wipes that people, you know, wipe their face and their hands and so forth with. And if you could find those, well, you surely couldn't find the ones that were like Clorox wipes. It's a brand name, but these Clorox wipes that had bleach or whatever in them to where they really did a great job on sanitizing, also completely sanitizing. You just couldn't find them anywhere. They were just sold out, and the places that did have them were kind of gouging the prices, or price gouging, and having those prices way up there, you know. So it's kind of interesting what takes place. Even if some of the stuff is available, you might find that you're having to pay more for it than you would have if you would have been prepared in advance. So keep that in mind. And we have been through that. We've seen that take place. The note at the bottom says, be responsible and prepare yourself for whatever the new day might bring. And that's a quote from The Peaceful Solution. If you look over to page 157, there's a couple of activities there that you could deal with, you know, to add a little more oomph to the lesson. You could watch this documentary, The Eyewitness Natural Disasters. You could talk to members of a terrorist organization. If you could talk, I mean, to the member of a terrorist organization, what would you say to convince him or her that hurting others is morally irresponsible? That's kind of an activity that you could think about and figure out, and possibly even do, like in a classroom situation or so forth. But some of the other things that you can do in this disaster preparedness and being responsible is setting your mind in advance. Right? Setting your mind in advance. You know, if you set your mind in advance and set it in advance that you're going to be prepared. Set your mind in advance that you're going to have a plan, that you're going to have a backup plan in case everything kind of goes haywire, you know. Well, have you heard the old saying, it's all in your head? Most people say it sarcastically, but there is some truth to it. And whether you're aware of it or not, every action begins with a thought. So hopefully, and one of the things you'll want to do as a teacher of the Peaceful Solution is kind of get that train of thought going in people's minds. Kind of get them to thinking a little bit about things. Now, we spent a lot of time on this particular chapter, and really in the book, but in this chapter we spent a bit of time in it and really went over these things, because there's things going on all around us. There's natural type disasters, there's war everywhere, there's disease epidemics, there's all these things taking place, and so you got to be prepared. And so you get that thought going in your head, that little bit of thing planted there for you to start thinking about, and then set your mind in advance to get prepared. And then watch your thoughts too. You got to watch your thoughts. When you're getting prepared for this, you can let somebody discourage you as quickly as you got discouraged. So you got to watch out for the influences around us. Now this goes back to everything we've learned in the Peaceful Solution, all the way through the Peaceful Solution. You know, we want to watch out. We want to be prepared. We want to watch out for the influences around us, what we're letting into our lives and what we're taking hold of. And we've got to be prepared for these things. It's like the flu, that influence. It's like the flu, man. It's all around us, and it can get in there when you least expect it, okay? And you got to watch your thoughts. Don't have negative thoughts. Try to stay away from those negative thoughts. It's hard to do, especially if you're not used to doing it. If you're not used to working every day on having positive thoughts, you need to start now. You need to start today and start changing your thought process. A negative thought pattern does not help you or anybody else. And you can see when someone has a negative thought pattern because it's the way their conversations start out, the way their thoughts of a certain situation start out. Either they're already starting out talking about it as if the situation is just too hard, you just might as well give up, there's just no way to do it, instead of having an open mind and thinking, there's got to be a way to deal with this. You got to be careful. You really do have to be careful, and you have to be careful about what you put in other people's minds and what you share with other people in what's going on with you. That leads into optimism and pessimism, and watching your thoughts. But anyway, be optimistic, not pessimistic. Work on it. That's something you can work on. That's a disaster that you can take care of. It's not one of those that catches you off guard. You've got it with you and you can get rid of it. You can work on it each and every day. And so remember, just like at the very front of this book, when we first look back, the preface of the book with the influence from the teacher. And again, we're talking about being a teacher of the Peaceful Solution. And the author of the Peaceful Solution says, thinking back on his early school years, he remembered many of the things taught by the teachers that were not part of the regular curriculum. It was those teachings that influenced his thinking, and many of them still guide his actions today. So that's what we want to be. We want to be the teacher that taught things that might not have been part of the regular curriculum like if we just taught math, reading, spelling, and so forth. That needs to be done, but we need to be teaching everything that goes along with it. While we're doing that, we need to be teaching the things that influence our students. We need to be teaching positive things and speaking positively. We can be the example when we're dealing with our students, not only our students, but everybody, and having a positive attitude about things. And that influence will carry on more than you even know. It will carry on just unbelievably far. People will look at you and say, how do you remain so calm when this is going on? Well, why not? Not being calm isn't going to help solve the situation. Being calm will help solve it because you have your head on straight and you'll be able to talk to people in a rational manner and be able to start with the basics and, step by step, walk yourself through it, walk others through it, and find the peaceful solution to whatever the problem is. I'd like to thank all of you for attending tonight and want to remind you that our next class is going to be on the 21st at 5:30 p.m. That's on Sunday the 21st at 5:30 p.m. Chris should be the teacher, and we look forward to hearing that, forward to being in class, whether you're online, whether in person, whether you're listening, whatever the case is. We'd like to invite you to be here and be part of it, okay? So, thank you. Hope to see you again.